The garden had always been Helen Fontaine's. 23 years of it, the raised beds, the berry patches, the herb spiral that her daughter Celia had helped her build the summer before Celia left for college, and that had been producing basil and thyme and rosemary ever since. Helen knew the names of things. She knew which plants set seed and which needed dividing and which had, over the years, migrated beyond their original borders into the lawn grass. She had not known about the nightshade. It had come in on its own, which is how nightshade comes, trailing along fences and through gaps in beds, the way opportunistic plants move. The particular patch had established itself in the back corner, behind the raised herb beds, and Helen had not noticed it in the way you stop noticing things in your own garden that have always been there, except that this one hadn't always been there, and she had simply not seen it. Her granddaughter Rosie, 2 years old, was staying for the summer, and Goliath, the Fontaine family's 11-year-old Saint Bernard, who had been slowing down for 3 years in the particular way of large senior dogs, and who spent most of his day in one of 4 locations, had started, in the second week of Rosie's visit, sitting between Rosie and the back corner of the garden. Every day, every time Rosie went outside, he would rise from his spot on the shaded porch and walk with Goliath's deliberate, considered walk to the garden's edge and sit. And if Rosie wandered toward the back corner, he moved in front of her and sat again. Celia, visiting with Rosie for the summer, said, "Mom, Goliath keeps blocking Rosie from the back of the garden." Helen said, "He's probably just following her." Celia said, "He sits down. He blocks her specifically." Helen went to the back corner of the garden. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The nightshade was in full berry stage, the berries of Solanum nigrum. Black nightshade are green when unripe and turn dark purple-black at maturity, at which stage they are visually appealing and accessible at toddler height and contain solanine and other glycoalkaloids in concentrations that in a 24-pound, 2-year-old are significantly more concerning than in an adult. Helen pulled the plants, all of them. She stood in the garden afterward and thought about how long they had been there. At minimum 6 weeks, possibly longer, and how many times she had taken Rosie into the garden without looking at the back corner. She looked at Goliath, who had followed her to the garden's edge and was watching the space where the plants had been with the specific attention of a dog, confirming that a problem has been removed. She said, "How long have you known?" He did not answer, which she would not have expected. But he looked at her in the particular way old dogs look at the people who have known them for 11 years, a look that contains more mutual history than language can quite accommodate. Celia called the Poison Control Center. The hotline specialist explained that nightshade ingestion in toddlers typically presents within 1 to 3 hours of consumption. She explained that the berries contain atropine-like compounds as well as solanine. She explained that outcome depends heavily on the quantity consumed and the timeliness of treatment. She said, "If your daughter had eaten even 3 or 4 of those berries, you would want to be at the emergency department." She said, "Are the berries accessible now?" Celia said, "My mother's dog made sure she never reached them." There was a pause on the line. The specialist said, "That's remarkable." Celia said, "He's 11. He's been slowing down. The specialist said he picked the right summer to pay attention. Has your pet ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Goliath received that evening a piece of Helen's roast chicken from the refrigerator, an event that had not occurred previously in their 11 years together. As Helen had always believed in the principle that dogs should eat dog food, she placed it in front of him on the kitchen floor. He considered it. He ate it with dignity. He went back to his spot on the porch. He died in September, 6 weeks after Rosie went home. He had been slowing for 3 years, and the vet said that fall was common for older saints, and that he had been comfortable, and that he had done well. Helen found him on his porch spot in the morning, in the way of old dogs who have decided. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Rosie came back for the funeral. She was 2 years old and did not fully understand funerals. But she understood that Goliath was gone, and she sat in the garden beside Helen and was quiet for a length of time that impressed both her parents. Then she said, "Goliath sat here," meaning the garden's edge, meaning his spot. Helen said, "Yes, he did." Rosie said, "He was keeping me safe." She was 2 years old. She said it with the simple, factual confidence of someone who had always known. The herb spiral is still producing basil and thyme and rosemary. The back corner has been cleared and replanted with lavender. Helen checks it every week. Tomorrow, a dog who refused to let a family member into a specific room, and what was discovered when they finally entered without him.